My name is Georgina Paskogan, and Phil Chan is joining us too. We are the co-founders of Find a Boss Yellowface, and we want to welcome Erin Baiano to What's the Tea?
What's the tea? We're going to find out, huh?
Asian descent. Yes, we're going to find out. During the month of May for Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and we want to highlight the achievements and the experiences of Asians in the world of dance. And I'm so happy that you decided to come, Erin, and you have a really unique perspective because you have inside the ballet world and post ballet world still in the ballet.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a fan.
Thank you for joining us.
We want to also highlight a charity if you would like, and if Phil likes to say the line, I'll let you say the line, Phil.
No, just is there a charity that people listening right now can support during these times? If there's, we might have a couple Crazy Rich Asians listening. So what can we do to help something in your community or a cause that you're passionate about?
That I am passionate about?
Yes.
Well, I'm definitely an animal advocate. So for me, it would probably, although that's not really COVID, although cats can get COVID. I was gonna say Animal Care Centers of New York. It's the City Pound. So they're the ones, I guess right now they're helping people get foster animals because that's a big thing now, to have a little company at home. So yeah.
I love that side effect of this particular pandemic. I think that's one of the positive things that's happening, and I think there should be more attention on it.
Definitely.
But they're keep them after.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, it's gonna be a while, so.
So are you a pet person? Do you have?
Such a pet person. I'm a big animal person. I have two cats. My longtime cat died last November, Bruno, who was my boy. And we got some new rescue cats back in January. So they're still acclimating. They're still, like, one just started letting me pet him. We're getting there. But yeah, they're really sweet and they're bonded. So we adopted them together. So yeah. Oh, also from Harlem Rescue Girls. That's where we got our cats. So definitely they could always use some Crazy Rich Asian money. So yeah.
Great.
Love it. I love it so much. Yeah. Love it. All right. So let's just jump into the interview.
Yeah. Okay.
What is the tea?
What is the
tea?
I think,
well, there's a pandemic. That's definitely the tea.
That's definitely the tea.
And I guess, what are some things that you're missing right now in your line of work? And, in dancers, like what we would ask them is like, what are some of your favorite things to dance? But for you, what are some of your favorite things to shoot, favorite things to do? You might want to explain to the readers what you do now for a profession.
Okay. Do you want me to give a quick bio?
Yeah.
Sure. You're gonna include it. I was gonna. So
give us the pitch.
The tea. So I'm from New York. My father is Chinese from Shanghai. My mother's American of Irish Italian descent from New York, and she raised me by herself. I never met my father, which was surprisingly not a thing. Like, people ask me all the time, like, would you want to find him? Do you want to know about him? And he wasn't, I don't know, my mom did such a good job, I think, raising me on her own, that he didn't feel relevant, or I didn't feel like I was missing anything. But it definitely sort of ties into how I feel about my Asian heritage, so it's a mixed bag, just like us,
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to School of American Ballet, and then I joined American Ballet Theatre, where I was there for a while, and in the corps. And now I am the photographer for New York City Ballet, your company. Yeah.
She's the reason why I look fabulous.
You look fabulous because you look fabulous, but I capture the fabulousness. I love it. I'm missing the season right now. For those of you who don't know, they're streaming. I think it was twice a week now?
Yes, Tuesdays and Fridays.
So you should definitely tune in for that. I just miss the company. I miss the energy, the spirit, and the camaraderie, and just shooting beautiful ballets every night. And it's just also just the communal spirit of gathering in a theater, turning off your phone. I get to shoot the show while other people watch the show, and it's just such a beautiful experience. It's hard right now. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but we're missing the arts a lot. I'm missing the arts. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. I miss you guys a lot. So, but yeah, I was thinking a lot about your initiative, and it's so important. But I was trying to think about sort of my personal experience with it. I don't know if you want to dive just like right into that, like something.
Let's do it.
Please.
Nutcracker. So when I was at SCB, I was a little kid in Nutcracker, and like the second actor in Paul Schnell or Hoop, and at the time we were still doing this version.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's funny because I don't think it ever occurred to me that was wrong when I was like a 9 or 10-year-old. And I was wondering why. And I thought, well, there's a couple things at play. I think one of which is, if you're mixed race with African-American or Black heritage, you are Black, and I think when you're mixed with Asian, it's a whole different thing. The things that people say to you, or the things that, how people identify you and how you identify yourself are not always on the same page. I mean, maybe it's like that in a lot of races, but I think Asian is not immediately identifiable, so I think mostly I was working within a very white world. And also the mockery and racism was just around so much, and no one ever questioned it. Like, you would watch Looney Tunes, and there's the ding 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 ding. There was also Black racism on Looney Tunes, and I don't think it's just on TV. And I mean, as a kid, it never really occurred to me until later, and then I was like, wow, that is terrible. So I think the most important thing is just to talk about it. Awareness. I think, maybe some people look at something like Nutcracker and think, well, what's the big deal? It is a big deal. It's a lot of people. You have to see people need to identify other people's pain, or just recognize how insulting it is. You know what I mean? Like, Nutcracker itself, the second act is problematic, and I get that. And there's people who have said, coffee's problematic, and it is, but it's not mocking. It's in the style of. It's more of like an homage. You know what I mean? Like same with Spanish. Spanish it's in the style of a Spanish dance, which isn't the same as like a little Chinese caricature jumping out of a box with pointy fingers,
Right?
So yeah.
We lost Phil for some reason is muted. Phil,
Oh,
you're
sorry.
muted.
Oh, there you are.
When I was just saying that one of the popular questions that I ask artistic directors is like, well, what else could it be? So if Arabian is problematic, like, what else could it be to make it not problematic but keep the choreography? And I really love Pacific Northwest Ballet's solution to that, which is a peacock. I think that was left over from their previous production, and now they do the balancing version. But instead of it being like a harem girl, it's a peacock. Yeah, it's sexy, it's a woman, it's whatever. It's still got the same, but it doesn't have this racial overtone added to it. It's just this like exotic bird that has its own thing, and so one of the things I was talking to Peter Boll about as well is like, well, for the Chinese variation, what else could it be? And Peter had this great idea of having a cricket pop out of the box. And so it's sort of like two girls and their pet cricket, which is a symbol in Chinese culture of musicality. Like, they're the most musical animals, so like a balancing dancer. But they're also like a prized, like, positive symbol. So you can keep the choreography, and I said you can even keep the fingers as like antenna. Like, if you make it specific to something else, but like, that doesn't take anything away from the history. Like, okay, so we don't do it the racist way anymore, but like, you still keep the choreography. And if you're upset about that, like, if you're upset by that, like, then you have to ask yourself, like, what are we actually holding on to then if you liked it that way?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Erin, I totally relate to you. Like, I didn't even view myself as a person of color until I got to New York City Ballet. It just never really was.
Yeah.
Yes, like, that caricature of the Chinese divertisement happened in my Nutcracker at home, but for some reason it didn't come across as garish until I was asked to perform it. And I think something is like internalizing into my body. I physically couldn't do it. So like I hear you there, and I think it's that's a totally valid perception to have, to not have really keyed into that. I mean, Phil and I were just talking this morning about how the Looney Tunes are insanely racist.
So racist. I mean, across the board for pretty much
like
everybody.
Pepe Le Pew, like like Phil called me the other night and was like, Pepe Le Pew, can we talk about
I'm
this?
just
And I
like,
was like,
I'm
I know.
surprised like SNL hasn't like done like a Pepe Le Pew Me Too trial. Like, you know what I mean? Like the trial of Pepe Le Pew, and like he comes and he's like, but I did touch her and she liked it, you know? And like, I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
Like,
you
he
know?
is a stalker. He is a predator.
Yes, he's an actual predator.
Not okay. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't occur to me, especially I guess as a child. But also, I think it's mostly because I was just viewed as white. You know, my mom was white. I mean, it was just like the experiences I had with race were just sort of like a side issue most of the time, but like an odd side issue. Like people would ask me, they'd see my mom. First of all, they automatically assume that your mom is going to be the Asian person. You know, it never like occurred to anyone that my mom might be white. So people would ask if I was adopted. You know, at the time they were like, "Oh, is she like, you know, one of the baby lift babies from Vietnam?" And my mom would be like, "No, she came from my womb. I made her."
Straight from me.
Yeah. Also, what I was what I was experiencing, I think, when I was a child was, you know, I went to public school during the day, and then I would go to School of American Ballet after. And I think what I was having more trouble was the socioeconomic differences. You know, I was going to public school where it was super diverse, and then I would go to like the super white ballet school with people who were, some of them were extraordinarily rich, you know. And so I think for me, I saw those differences more than the racial element. Like, I think it was probably a lot harder to be Black or African American at School of American Ballet at that time in the 80s.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a great jumping off point to kind of ask, like, so who was it, your mom or was it you that like expressed interest in dancing? Like what pushed you into the School of American Ballet?
Yeah, I had nothing. My mom was a single mom, so at one point she had 2 jobs. You know, I don't know how she did it. She was an insane person. She was also a young mom, so that probably helped. She had me when she was 21. And so we had to put me somewhere after school. You know, we didn't have money for a nanny or anything. So I went to Ballet Hispanico, which was very cool and a very cool experience where everyone there thought I was Latina, which is like, you know, you could sort of like, you could kind of pass for everything a little bit. So I spent a year there, and someone was like, "Oh, your kid's pretty good at ballet. You might want to check out School of American Ballet." So did the audition and then ended up there.
And then piggybacking off of that question, like when did you catch the fever? Maybe that's a bad pun right now during a pandemic. Pardon me. When did you fall in love and need to become a professional dancer?
I don't know when I consciously made that decision. I felt like I was always sort of like just making it. I never felt like good enough or like I was gonna make it, you know what I mean? So I feel like when I sort of got into the teens where you have to decide if you're really gonna pursue it, I felt just like really kind of lucky to be there. And I was like, if I can do this, I want to do this, you know? But yeah, it wasn't like I was a little kid and I was like, oh, I'm dreaming of being a ballerina. Like, I think I want it to be a veterinarian or like, I don't know. Sometimes I think back, sometimes the bar was really low. I was like, I feel like I'm just going to be like an administrative assistant, and like, not that that's a low bar, but I mean, like, I didn't seem like anything extraordinary for myself. I was like, I feel like I'm just going to live like an ordinary life.
But then got into American Ballet Theatre.
I know.
So like that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, no,
so can you explain how that happened for readers that don't know about your history? Just like a quick summary.
So I did workshop, and I had actually gone, it was like so dramatic. I had gained a bit of weight when I was a teenager, and then so Peter passed on me. He was like, I know, she's fat. So I spent the summer working in the press office actually as in an administrative capacity. Because my mom was like, you should probably learn how to type and have some like real world skills. And so I did that for a while. And then the winter came and they needed apprentices for Nutcracker. So I went and did that, and then I got in and loved it for a good 6, almost 7 years, and till I didn't. So ABT is it's, at the time I was there, it was really top heavy and it wasn't easy to advance. You had to be either super extraordinary like a Gillian Murphy, or you had to put your time in, you know, because it was, you know, people coming from Russia and Cuba and all the places. And I think I just got tired of it. I was just like, you know what, I don't feel in control of my life or my career, and I think I want to transition out.
So then how did you come into this passionate, like, love of photography?
Yeah, that was also like a very round, I feel like I've sort of fallen into everything I've ever done. But I had been friends with Paul Kolnick when I was in school, because, you know, he shoots workshop and he would shoot our lecture demos. And when I first joined ABT, they would have these 10-week layoffs. Like I did Met season, and it was another 10 weeks off. And, you know, he's like, if you need a side hustle, you know, I have things around the office that need to be done. So I started doing that. And then when I left ABT and didn't know what I wanted to do, I fortuitously ran into him and on the street. And I was like, yeah, you know, I just left my job. I had done that movie center stage. And I was like, now I got nothing. Probably go back to school. And he was like, well, you know, come work for me. And then, you know, photography assistants are photographers themselves most of the time. I would say maybe there's an odd person who's not, but, you know, so they work as an assistant for a while, and then they want to go do their own thing. So he had a bunch of assistants that just, you know, left. They were pursuing their own careers. And so gradually, you know, learned to develop in the darkroom. I learned how to second shoot. So I was shooting for him. And my first shoot was at New York City Ballet, which is like insane. But and I was like, I kind of love this. So then I studied, and he taught me, and I you know, just sort of went out on my own eventually, and here I am. So yeah,
can you explain like second shoot? Like I can infer the meaning, but just so everyone knows exactly what you mean by second shoot.
Yeah, like at a wedding, if there's 2 shooters, you have the main shooter and then a second shooter to get extra coverage. But then, all the angles. Yeah, you've probably seen like photography teams that it's, you know, sometimes it's a couple or they shoot together, so you're getting all the different angles. So sometimes if they need extra coverage, I would, you know, cover for him. Or if he double booked himself, you know, it's getting gigs as a photographer, it's not easy, and it's fairly competitive. So he booked himself. It was Hairspray in Seattle. It was like the previews of Hairspray. So of course he was going to do that, but he was also supposed to shoot City Ballet. And I think he was kind of like, you know, you'd rather kind of send your own associate to kind of, you know, keep that gig. So yeah, if he needed coverage, I was his go-to.
That's wonderful. I mean, you must be blessed with some luck, because like that is such, but you're also an amazing photographer. So there's talent there too. Like all the discipline that you had in your training, like you just completely just used it and transitioned it into a new form of income and a passion. And I think that's it's important. It was important for us to speak with you, because, you know, there's so many different avenues a ballet career can spread out into. Yeah. It doesn't have to end in the principal ballet, you know, dancer role. Not at all.
Well, ballet gave me my entire life. All my friends, all my contacts. I mean, you know what a world it creates. It's a fairly small world, but it does create a very rich environment to meet people and grow and learn. And I think, it sounds, when I talk about sort of my biography, it sounds so easy, but I put like an extraordinary amount of time in, you know, like as we all do in ballet. And
I don't think
so it wasn't as easy as it kind of sort of sounds sometimes. But it was also lucky. Like there was some luck involved. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
let's see. What's the next question? You're kind of like answering them all on your own. So I'm just
I
trying
looked
to,
at them
like,
2 days ago and I
read.
haven't looked at them since. What was it? No, I did
It's
have
totally
some-
fine. You definitely downloaded them.
I did. I think, like, getting back to the sort of topic of Asianness, I wanted to ask you like, what do you feel like there's enough representation? Do you feel like you get treated differently? Like, what?
I do.
Yeah.
I, like, a short answer, I do feel like I get different treated. The treatment is different, especially under Peter. Like, it didn't matter, and Peter ended up choosing me. And I know there were a lot of Asian ballerinas that were presented an opportunity and they chose not to take it. And I was not aware. It was only recently that, I was like having a conversation with one of our, like, AGMA connections, and he was like, oh yeah, it's like fully known that, like, if you were an Asian and you were a woman, to not go to City Ballet because you were never going to progress.
Yeah.
And I was like, ring a ding ding.
Yeah.
No one gave me the heads up on that. And, like, I was just like, I'm totally digging this Balanchine. I want to do it. Let me at it. And I think, like, Peter loved this work ethic, and he also, like, as much as he loved, like, the passion and the strength in my personality, he also hated it at the same time.
It was challenging for him, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there are instances in perception where it's hard for me to get out of, like, the exotic sexiness. And I am a sensual person. And I think all dancers, I would argue, are sensual people. We use our bodies. We dance through time and space. Like, how could you not be open and perceptive to that? But I think for some reason, the fact that I didn't look like everyone else in the room, it became easy to exoticize me and put me in a different box. So, like, yeah, that was my, like, have you ever had any experiences in your career or even, like, afterwards? You touched on it a little bit, like, of, like, perhaps not specific Yellowface and ballet, but any sort of like, experience that you had that made you feel other, that you would care to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear what you're saying about New York City Ballet, and also the otherness, the sort of, like, where people don't know what to do with you, kind of. Like, there's the people perception of you, and then there's who you are and your perception of yourself. And sometimes they don't align. I think I was thinking about the other day, I'll get to the ballet part first, but when I was a little kid, like, 7, 8, I had done some, like, commercial work and some print work. And so my mom would take me to these auditions, and sometimes they just would, like, at that time, not know what to do. Like, they would send me to these, like, auditions for a Vietnam War movie, and I'd get there and you weren't Asian enough. And then I would go to the other auditions that they would send out, and they were like, you're not blonde, blue-eyed enough, like, so I always sort of felt like, I think it really did have an effect. That, I mean, at the time, now I know so many, I mean, look at Nutcracker casting for the children this year. Just,
we've gone they did a great job.
All of them are half Asian.
Yeah.
Across the board. And they're just these beautiful, gorgeous children, and they don't have to fit in a box anymore. And I feel like my generation, definitely you were other. Like, they didn't know what box they could put you in. So they were sort of like, you're exotic, but maybe not exotic enough, like, so I think with ballet, I did feel like I didn't maybe fit in, but it was so much more subtle, I think, than being African American. You know what I mean? It was more like,
right,
you're just not like everybody else in some way. Or, like, someone would say, oh, there's a little something around your eyes, and you're like, don't do it. Don't you dare do that squinty eye. That
is what we call a microaggression.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there was a lot of that. It was a lot of, like, oh, are you Eskimo? What are you?
Wow.
where are you from? Oh, I'm from New York. No, where are you really from? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like people try to get to the bottom of like, what is your deal? You know,
What's the difference? Because we need to find a way to categorize you.
yeah.
And the fact is that and I echo that sentiment in that, like, at City Ballet, and Peter said it to my face. He's like, I just don't know what to do with you.
You're like, obviously.
I'm like, well, that is clearly your job and not my job. And anytime I voice what sort of dream, you're like, no. And so I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What to say anymore.
I mean, there was one girl who it's the funny things that sort of like stick with you. There's this beautiful apprentice, full Asian. She's Japanese. On the smaller side, and she was an apprentice when I was at the ABT, and she was absolutely gorgeous, and she did not get a contract. And they told her something like, I think they said they used her height as an excuse, but then also said like something to the effect of like, well, you don't really fit in, you know? So when I heard that, I was like, to me, as I said, it's conjecture and it's not corroborated, but it felt like it was because she was Asian. I don't know. I mean, now it's so much more diverse, and I think it's it's better. You just have to relate and see other people that look at you. It's like the Misty effect, you know, if you see other people who look like you, that they can achieve that, it's, you know,
right,
it's possible.
But it's not beyond that. It's like the Arthur Mitchell effect. It's the Raven Wilkinson effect.
Absolutely.
It's the Sono Asato effect. Like she like
the OGs.
Yeah, they were really, really pioneers in a time where it was hard. I mean, I think Sono couldn't even go on tour with ABT at one point.
That is insane. Yeah, I remember
because
reading that.
because of the time. And so we are piggybacking on their
Absolutely.
paving the way, but we still are paving the way. And like you mentioned something about the casting of the Maries, and this is in New York City Ballet's production, and they had a very, very wonderfully diverse cast. And I just wanted to share, just like aside, and ask you a question. It's like I overheard people being like, oh, well, we have to, like, this is so difficult because now we have to relight this, like the lighting was different. Did you find that it was hard to photograph these beautiful children because they were differing in skin tone?
Not at all.
I didn't. I'm sure that like
you balance it out.
Matters,
yeah, sometimes you have to open up the shutter a little bit. And yes, I mean, it's just a fact that dark skin tones will not reflect the light as much as a light skin tone. It is what it is. But to adjust for it, and
hardship.
It's a problem. It is definitely not an issue that needs to be solved. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I was curious if you thought with one of the Maries who was getting so much press for being the first Black Marie, that they really didn't bring up her Asian heritage as well.
But she's also, yeah.
That she's half. Her dad is Asian. So yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. But I just thought it was an interesting feature.
Well, I think Obama is like the first Black president. Like he's not the first biracial president, or he's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's the Blackness is, you know, we just have a culture of the one drop situation, you know, like anything less than is removed from whiteness, and there's a huge barrier there. I mean, I think that's just, it's more visible, so it's easier to make that feel bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we can also argue, like, why wasn't there more astounding press that Stella was promoted at ABT when Misty was promoted too? Like, they both have wonderful, wonderful dancers and had earned that, but it was like one garnered most of the attention more than the other. And I don't, who's to say? I think
there's something with like white adjacentness that Asian people have. It's like we're not at the table, but we're in the room. Yeah. So it's like, you know, maybe we shouldn't rock the boat, or maybe it's not as big of a deal. It's not as big of an achievement. You know, so I think there's some of that in play. But what I think the solution to that is when Asian advocates are pushing to have more equity in the field, that we aren't just talking about Asian issues, but it really is acknowledging the shoulders we stand on of other leaders and other movements from other racial groups, as well as the fact that our work has to be inclusive of other groups as well. Like, you know, the tide rising lifts all boats.
All
kind of
boats, yeah.
situation.
Yeah,
I
like I
agree.
think
that-
it helps us all to like work together. Sorry to interrupt you, Phil.
No, I mean, we're working together.
All the boats are raising up. Yeah, no, I think it's also important just talking about it, because it's funny. Now they make different skin tone, flesh tone tights. I don't know if some of your viewers know that, it's classical ballet, you always wear pink tights. And I don't think it ever even just occurred to me that that was supposed to be a representation of skin tone. It's just like, oh, it's just pink tights. I didn't realize how important it was until people started talking about it. And I was like, yes, absolutely, should be represented.
Well, something that I've started doing is I've started tea dyeing my tights to better match my skin tone. And a lot of my feedback that I get is like, your line, and like my line's not bad. Like to be an advocate for myself, like my ballet line has been perfected as much as my ballet can. Like, granted, there are always things to work on, but I think what you're seeing is like I don't look the same, like, because the tights aren't my, like,
yeah.
And like Olivia Boisson, when she puts on tights, like, it's like we need our line, like it's an extension of line. Tights are, so when they don't match,
it's being bisected.
But that's not our fault.
Yeah. No, I'm just glad it's
a
topic, and that people are addressing it, and that other companies, are starting to allow people to wear their own skin, and
which you're the best to interview, because you set things up for like the next question so perfectly.
Glad I could do that for you.
We were thinking, so like the question is, what do you think the ballet world it could be doing better in terms of like race representation? Like, is it expanding upon those like small changes as allowances?
I think the ballet world is doing a pretty good job, a little slow, but I think a pretty good job in trying to address some of these issues and bring more people to the table. Like SAB has a really great voice program that recruits from the city. They just find talent. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about ballet is, if you could find a talented person, they could be from anywhere. They could be, I just saw a video of a boy in a slum in Kenya who looks brilliant, and you hope that, he'll get the scholarships and things he needs to succeed, So I think that's great. Representation is so important. I think what you're doing is really important. I think just keep the conversation going. And I think also just to open your mind and eyes that not everyone's situation is going to be the same. You can't lump everyone into, I feel like there's the Asian cliches and stereotypes that, sometimes they're cute, yeah, you think I'm good at math and I'm smart. That's awesome. But it's not, but it's not always true. And no one knows where you're from or what your experience has been. No one knows that. So just, I think the ballet world needs to keep an open mind about who people are, and just keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Let there be more opportunities, be colorblind. I think casting, you see a lot of like something like the Royal Shakespeare, which for years has been doing atypical casting for years and years. Here, Black, Asian, Latino, whatever. It's, keep doing that, be colorblind. I think
we're on the road. We're on the road to that. I think there's been I can only speak for my own experience, like with City Ballet. I think there's been a long history of trying to match an original dancer in a role, and a lot of that has come down to body type and look, down to the very specifics. And I think as companies get more diverse, like, you can expand upon that. You can think so much, like there's a broader perspective to be had there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's an interesting flip side to that too, though. Like, if you think about colorblind casting, it might say, oh, we're doing Madame of Butterfly this season, and we couldn't find an Asian woman to sing Cho-Cho-san, and that's why we cast a white woman. So we're colorblind casting. Whereas it might be better to say, well, if we can't find an Asian woman to sing the role, then maybe let's do a different opera. That's another That's another, you know, so it's tricky then too, then if you're of Asian descent and Nutcracker season rolls around, does that mean you always have to dance tea and you never get to dance Spanish, even though that's more your flavor as a dancer, or you never get to dance Sugar Plum if you want to be the prima ballerina and should be. So it's, you know, it's not just black and white. But I think there needs to be more dialogue and more sensitivity for our artistic leaders when they're talking about casting to be able to navigate this conversation a little bit better.
I think that's absolutely fair. And I think it's also going to be per ballet on a case by case basis, and there's nuance, and, you know, some things might work and some might not. Sometimes genderless casting is great and sometimes it's not going to work, you know? So I think but to just push the walls a little and push the ceiling a little, I think. There's room for everyone at the table, right? I mean,
that's the magic sentence. There is room for everyone at the table. Like, one of the most upsetting things that I've ever heard in my life is to hear that there aren't enough shows. There's not enough room. Like, that is devastating because that's nothing you can change. Like, I don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
You know, and like, that's supposed to make someone feel, I think it's said to make someone feel better, but it absolutely makes someone feel like
yeah, I know. I think dancers, I look at the young kids in the company these days and I'm so inspired by them because they don't ask for permission. Like, I feel like my generation was always asking for permission. They're like, if they want to do something, they make it. If they want to make a video, they make it. If they want, you know, if they want to choreograph, they choreograph. So I don't know. I do think there's room.
Yeah, so, absolutely. There absolutely is. And so once again, you teed it up amazing. Like, so if someone came to you and asked advice, whether they wanted to be looking into a dance career or looking into like career transition, what would you say to them? Like, what you've lived it. So what are your words of wisdom, my dear?
My words of wisdom. Have a good therapist. Oh,
that's true. That's solid, sound advice.
No, aside from that, I think my experience, you know, it's so funny because growing up in being a ballet dancer, I had so many self-esteem issues and so many confidence issues, and you know, as time goes on and with the hindsight and, you know, wisdom that you acquire, it's just not worth the effort to be your own worst enemy. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna face enough adversity anywhere. You just like let yourself fail, let yourself fall, let yourself try things. I mean, when you hear some of the jobs that I've had, you would be like, like the time when I quit ballet and I became a shoe model because I was like I know the sample size. I would go to Vegas and do like car shows. No.
Oh, no, how is that possible?
I don't even know what that is.
On Wiki Feet. Wiki Feet is apparently I have a Wookie foot.
What? Yeah, but you have like, you know, pretty feet.
No, it's not about that. This is full on foot fetish.
Right. That is creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Okay.
I was weird. Have we gone off rails?
A foot fetish. Oh, only talking
racial
to
representation, Gina.
Of course we ended up here.
Of course we did.
Did we not?
So, like, okay, so basically try and fail.
You try and fail, have a good work ethic. Like, I was never afraid of work. Even if it was like not great work, I was like, you gotta pay rent, just do your work. You know, you can pursue your other side hustles and what you want to be, but mama's got to put food on the table, right? So
yeah,
on that table that everyone's invited to.
Yes, exactly. And what do you think we need to do further to build a loyal audience and to keep a loyal and younger audience? Because it's important for Phil and I, and of course it's important for you too, to keep ballet going into the future. Like what pings as like really, really pertinent right now?
Well, I think the ballet world is primed for success right now because it's everywhere. It's become so popular and some, you know, commercialized to a certain extent, which is sometimes okay and sometimes it's not, you know, like, you know, it depends on the day. But I, like everything else, invite them, you know. There's, what is it, young patrons, or They have, you know, the art series nights. People love them. They're so much fun, and they make ballet fun. And then people come and see the ballet, and they get hooked, and then they become regular subscribers, audience members. You know, outreach, educational outreach, always a winner. You know, make it
also,
accessible.
like, your
you know,
socioeconomic comment made me think, like, maybe perhaps we should have like subscriptions at like every level. There's got to be a way to do that. I mean, that's not our job, but like, perhaps,
I mean, especially with the economy on the decline, it's going to be smaller ballets, smaller audiences, lower ticket prices. That might have to be a thing for a while. I mean, who knows now with what we're dealing with, like what's going to happen. But I think it'll also, I'm sorry, Phil. I was going to say, it's just going to like open things up to, you know, thinking outside the box, more outdoor shows, you know, more, you know, more like, you know, I was watching sort of an aside, but accessibility, I think, is key. Like, I was watching the Met. Did you guys see any of the Met Opera Gala? It was really long, but just the orchestra playing together, like, got me in all the feels. You know, like, I was like, art. You know, I think include people. I think ballet has suffered from sort of an elitist, was like what was I gonna say? Sorry.
Mentality. Well, I think you have to be both elitist because you want there to be like mystery and accessibility. It's got to be expensive, so it's got to be luxurious.
Yeah.
But also, you know, it's this tension because it's this aristocratic art form that came from the royal courts that has this air of royalty. But when it came to America and like our way of doing it, and as people of color, we have to make it about how do we see ourselves in this aristocratic art form? Like, how do we see we shouldn't belong here? We're not supposed to be the ones doing it.
Right.
Either as Americans or as people of color or as poor people. Like, this doesn't really belong to us. So how do we, now that we've been colonized by it, our very bodies do it, like, how do we find our place and our voice and, you know, in this art form? I think that's the big question that we have to start asking ourselves a little bit more, and not just say, well, we did Swan Lake last year this way, so we're going to do it again this year.
It's a complicated question, and I think the answer is also going to be equally as complex. But I feel like you just have to keep on keeping on. I see more and more Asian dancers every day, you know. So if Asians are going to see themselves on the stage, it's a thing that could happen, and it's just going to perpetuate. And gosh, I don't know. I'm sort of like slightly egalitarian about it. I'm like, take it to the people. You know? Not in like a Cuban Soviet era communist way, but
although the Cubans and the Soviets did love their ballet, you know?
Yes, I mean, apparently in Russia, you know, they show Swan Lake for like every state holiday or state anything that happens, a state funeral, they show Swan Lake. I mean, it's ingrained in the culture. I think make it part of more of, I mean, Balanchine did such a great job of Americanizing, in a sense, ballet. You know, make it our own.
I want to see Stars and Stripes at NASCAR on the 4th of July.
That would be amazing.
How do we make that happen?
I am not sure.
Take it to the people. It's probably not gonna happen.
Like, it's so hot your point shoes melt.
I've actually performed on a stage, and it was so hot that the Marley became like chewy. So like you were trying to like boring and turn, but you were just like in quicksand. It was bizarre.
That is nuts.
It was bizarre, but it was fun.
So maybe not NASCAR. No, but I hope that I don't know what the metrics are about how many people are watching the live. I mean, not the live streams, they're not live, but the streaming, City Ballet streaming.
I think that's gonna provide a lot of information for our new leaders and what needs to be done to make people want to tune in. I mean, if you can't even get them to tune in when it's free,
yeah,
what like that's something we need to think about and talk about and ask questions why, and get on the ground and figure it out. And I know that I know that that's an important aspect that the new leaders are looking at, and it's holding them accountable to do the work. Is not we're not in a time where we can fall back on what's been done before. We have to really literally pave a new way. And all be in it together. Dancers, administration, we have to find a new sort of like balance and equality, with respect still being paramount all around the board, but like finding a new where like dancers aren't referred to as kids. Dancers we are part, we are the lifeblood of this company. And you know, we might be young, but we're still doing the job of an adult.
I think the population at large is starting to understand and respect ballet in ways that we've never seen before, which we should definitely take advantage of. You know what I mean? In terms of, you know, visibility. I think that's important, because it used to be, you know, sort of, I feel like it kind of parallels what's happened to Lincoln Center in general. You know, Liz Diller is one of the architects who did the High Line. Diller, and I can't remember the name of her. I'm really bad at architecture knowledge. What they said, I saw this lecture series with her, and she said that the problem with Lincoln Center, as it was originally created, was that it was closed off. You know, it was behind all these marble slabs, and it was someplace that people went. You didn't really, you know, there was that overpass, and it was not someplace you hung out. You either went and left, or you weren't really invited. You know, it was for a certain, you know, aspect of society.
What an interesting perspective. Wow.
And so she said we wanted to open it up. We wanted, like, the High Line. They wanted a place where you know, people could go and do nothing, just go and sit, go and veg. She's like, New Yorkers are on the move all the time, they're doing everything all the time. She said that's what we did at Lincoln Center. We more places to sit, more where you could see the open studios with the glass, more opportunity to see what's going on. You know, so there was some, you know, transparency, literally. You know, they were like, oh, it's something you can look at and enjoy. You don't have to be, you know, an elitist or a rich person to enjoy this. You can just go and watch people do ballet in a studio, or go sit and eat your lunch and, you know, watch the dancers walk by in a non-creepy way. But you know what I mean? Like, they made it inviting, and they made it accessible, and you never had to be worried or intimidated, or, you know, that this wasn't the place for you. You know, you could go and see, like, oh, what is this place? Let me take a brochure, or, you know, so I think that's really important, you know, that we're not this, you know, closed off hoity-toity thing that, you know, you have to be a gazillionaire to appreciate.
Well, here you have it now. Erin Baiano is inviting you to come to Lincoln Center.
Come to Lincoln Center. And in the meantime, no, I'm super excited about all the performances being streamed. And that's where I'll be watching you guys, pretending I'm photographing. I get to be a civilian and just sit and watch. But,
yeah, I miss you too. I miss being in the studio, but I know it's going to come back, and we're all going to be like overwhelmed with how much work we have to do.
Yeah.
But so I'm just kind of taking this moment to reset and really think about a lot of things. And these discussions have really helped me clarify exactly where I stand. And you know, like eventually I'll be in the hot seat getting my own interview from Phil, and I don't know if he's gonna add someone else.
That. Grill her, Phil.
That'll
like take her to task. No, I'm excited.
And
for all your
will.
guests, and yeah, keep me posted.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming, Erin Baiano, and thank you again all who tuned in. And be sure to check out our Instagram page at Final Bow for Yellowface to reveal tomorrow who the dancer / Asian American chat will be with. And that'll happen at noon. And you're the best. What can I say? Many, many, many thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm giving
you Erin.
A Zoom hug. Bye, you guys.
I love you.
Love you too.